Hello, all my crafty people out there. It is time for our weekly project. If you haven't been here before, my name is Stephanie and I upcycle clothing. Generally things I find at my local thrift stores, sometimes estate sales. And today is no exception. I believe I thrifted both of these pieces from American Thrift. I might have gotten this one at Goodwill. If I got it at Goodwill, I probably paid anywhere from $1.50 to $3 for it. And I think this one was somewhere around the $4 mark. So, and yes, it has safety pins on it at this moment. Bear with me. So, we have a long sleeve green Van Helsing or Van Hoosen, whatever. It's a men's shirt. And I like the color, and I like that it was plain. And this sweatshirt, I want to combine it with that. And it's really because of this. It's too tight. It's uncomfortable. And sweatshirts are often like this for me unless I get them really big. So let's try to upsize it with this shirt and still make it cute. If you want to follow along, by all means do. Like, subscribe, let me know what you think. Don't forget to hype, and I'll catch y'all at the table. Okay, everybody, here are two pieces. This is the button down in the back. I've been working on folding it. That's quite a challenge. And here is our sweatshirt. It's a plain cream sweatshirt. I have my safety pins up here. No, I wasn't trying to be weird. I was trying to figure out where I wanted my shirt to start and where the sweatshirt could be up top. So I took these two, and like I said, I just roughed those in as far as just standing in front of the mirror. So we're going to get some measurements on it. And the best thing to do when you're measuring something like this is to find something that's stable and equal on both sides. You can't really do the shoulder seam because that could be different just for the fold. But that corner seam right there where the armhole meets the neckline, oops, be easier if I do it the right way. I'm getting, if I put the corner of my ruler right there, I'm getting approximately 6 inches. And on this side, when I do the same thing, I'm getting a little less than 6 inches, about 5 3/4. But I think 6, partly because I like easy numbers, will work. So I'm going to take these pins out. They've done their job. And we're going to measure down 6 inches from these corner seams where the arm again meets the neckline and the body. It's kind of like a peasant style blouse, the way it's put together. It's typical sweatshirt process. So we're going to measure down. We're going to try and keep this as straight as possible. We're just going to measure down 6 inches. And I am just going to take my little blue marker and just put a dot. So I don't want anything extraordinary. I'm going to have to take this and wash it, and do all that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm just going to put a little dot. Now I should have a pretty good, it's fairly easy to measure with 2 dots where you want your line to be. So let me get the bigger ruler though. I make this decision because I got my arms like this. I fold it out. Part of them is coming off too, remember? Or, well, maybe not, but yes, that's what's happening. All right. Now, if I do this, I'll just make sure right there. And right there, okay? Let's make sure. I always like to triple check. Yeah. So we know we're going to cut it off at that point. So I'm going to draw my line across from one side arm sleeve seam, the sleeve there, to the other. All right, now that gives us an idea of where we're cutting off. Now, we're going to cut off down the sleeve as well, but we're going to save our cuffs. So we're going to cut short of the cuff. And we might leave probably about a 1/4 inch there above the cuff. So we'll have something to sew to without having to sew down over the stitching that we've already got for the cuff. All right. Now we got an idea of where we're going with this. Now this is the tricky part. We're just going to have to find a way to measure down what we want to remove of the sleeve. And we're going to use the bottom seam to gauge that. And we'll check twice. I'm just kind of pulling it straight. And I don't want to remove a whole lot of the sleeve, but I want to remove enough to put part of this sleeve in. So right here, we're looking at about 2 inches, and then it tapers down here. I don't really want to take a whole 2 inches. So we're going to go with that right there. Remember, this is erasable marker, water-soluble marker. So we can get rid of that if we need to. And start all over again. Now, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. Before I cut this, I want to show you what I'm going to do with the shirt. Now the shirt I have folded in half, and I've unbuttoned it so the fold is good and even. And I'm really trying to match up my seams under the arm from the hem all the way to the sleeve. Because essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take the bottom half of this shirt and put it in here. Now we want this to be a little wider than what we're removing from the sweatshirt, so we have that extra fabric that we're trying to get in there to make it fit a little easier. Because, I don't know, something about sweatshirts, they're not always the greatest when it comes to that kind of fit on my arms. And the first thing I'm going to cut off is actually these cuffs, because we're not going to be utilizing them. So I'll get rid of them just to make it easier to lay everything flat. It was pretty simple to snip off these cuffs. Just follow the seam, and there they go. Okay, I've got the shirt pinned together or clipped together as best as possible. It's got curves. It's a shirt, so kind of have to bulk up the underarm here, but making sure our seams are all matching is what's going to get us the best cut. So what I want to do first is measure out where I want to cut it, and I'm going to use this pocket as a base, and I'm going to measure 2 inches above that pocket. And that's what I'm going to cut off here. Oh, also make sure that your buttons are underneath your buttonholes, because it's kind of doing it blind. And I don't want to cut this buttonhole off. I want it to be my first button. And I am only going to draw a line to my shoulder seam here. Okay? Like that. Kind of like we did with the sweatshirt. And now we're going to go down the arm. And the arm, like I said, I want it to be twice as much, or not twice as much, but more than what we're removing from the sweatshirt, obviously, because we want to add to this sweatshirt. So I'm going to go from this point that I drew. It's hard for y'all to see on the screen. And I'm going to trace down a good, healthy, let's say, about 4 inches. So let's just do it this way. I'm going to go over to the other side. So there's 4 inches here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we want to, like I said, we want a pretty healthy amount here. So we're doubling what we're taking off. Whoops. That's the sleeve there. All right. So now we're going to take this off, and we're going to add it to our sweatshirt. Okay, first I cut the green shirt. Pretty simple. Rotary cutter just didn't act up. And then here I am folding the sweatshirt in half, just like I did the green shirt. I figured one cut would be easier and making it more even. So I'm checking all my seams. And then, again, I have not found that box of blades, so there I'll be struggling with the rotary cutter. Then I thought scissors. No, let's do rotary cutter again. Nope, scissors. So eventually I got it all cut. Now this is turned inside out. And you can see this is the button placket. And what I did is I took the back here and I folded up these two seams together to get the center point, and I marked it. So it's got a little blue mark right there. So now I have, and of course the placket is the center of the front. So I have some points, I guess, of reference as to how we're going to pin on the top half. Now with the top half, I did the same thing. I folded it in half between these two seams here. And I got this little mark here, the blue mark, and the same with the back. So now I have 2 points of reference against the green shirt. Okay, it's taking a little experimenting to get this sleeve into the sleeve. So what I'm doing first is I am pinning one side. I pinned one side. This is the front. And I started at the button placket and I ended down here at the sleeve, okay? And I didn't want to lose any of the length of the sleeve because I kind of want it to be a little puffy. So I pin until I got down here. And on the other side, I did the same thing, but I didn't want to lose that placket, the sleeve placket right there. So I hope you can see this. I put a pin here, overlapping the edge of my shirt about a 1/4 inch, almost a 1/2 inch actually, over the edge. So it will be my seam allowance when I attach it to the rest of the cuff. Then at the end of the placket, I put a pin. And I did a straight pinning from the center point all the way down here. And then I had about this much fabric left over. So what I did is I just did 3 small pleats. So I did 3 small pleats right above the placket. Try saying that 10 times. And I measured it up against the other side to put my pleats in where I needed them in the front. And I only needed 2 pleats in the front. It wasn't as long in the front as it was in the back. If you've got that done, then we can go to the machine. And I think I want to serge this, but there's one trick. I got to get the serger to start here, which I can't start it at the end of the cuff. So I'm going to have to kind of fit this in. It won't go all the way to the end, but I'll get it as close as I can and serge all the way to the other end. And do the same with the back side. Serge one end all the way to, the other end. Okay, we're serging one side and then the other. And it was kind of tricky to get it started because, again, you can't just meet the edge of the fabric and go. And you have to serge off before you get to the end in order to save that seam allowance. Okay. We have our shirt and our sweatshirt connected, and I turned it right side out. So this is what we would be looking at. And you can see where the bulk and the puffiness is going to come from with the bottom of the sleeve. Now, the tricky part to this process is going to be connecting these 2 pieces. Connecting this bottom of the button down to this bottom of the cuff that we saved. And what I found was the most effective was to turn it inside out. So I'm going to show y'all what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn the cuff inside out like this. So we're looking at the inside of the cuff. And then we're going to take our shirt, our button-down shirt, that we're trying to put in here. Gotta pull it all up. There we go. Now that's all of it right there. And we're gonna have to find a way to get it in here. And what I started with was this seam that's down the bottom, essentially, of the shirt sleeve. I'm gonna connect it to the seam that's on the bottom of the sweatshirt. So that's kind of like my base point, where I know I have to begin. And I am pinning it directly to edge to edge. You could pin it differently, however you want. The tricky part is this corner here. This is where we came down and then we went over the edge of the cuff. And you're just going to have to kind of treat it like a straight line. It might take a couple extra pins, and that's okay. More pins is not a problem. The placket, you want to make sure you make that meet properly. Okay. And then when it comes to the excess, because this will be obviously a little bigger than what we removed from the shirt, I am just simply, let's see how I did this one. Yeah. I am pleating in towards that center seam. So, see, I'm just making that little pleat and folding it in. And we'll do that the same way on the other side. So that will take up our excess. We're not worrying about gathering or anything like that. We're just taking up the excess with a simple pleat. I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine, kind of give it a basting stitch across here. I sewed both of the cuffs underneath the machine and ended up not having to serge them at all. They came out better this way. Okay, after I sewed down the inside here with the machine, the sewing machine, honestly, I didn't feel like I needed to sew it down with the serger. It seemed to be quite perfect, actually, so I'm not taking that extra step of fighting the serger on this particular seam. And you can see it kind of rounded up. So I'm real happy with that. And it happened on both sides. I say it happened. You know, sometimes it's a surprise. So anyway, I didn't end up serging it. I just sewed it down. You could zigzag over it if you were worried about any type of fraying or anything like that. I think I'm good. So now I tried it on and it's cute, but it's too long. It's a, you know, it's a typical man's shirt. It's too long. So I'd like to remove the bottom from about this point, which is midway between the last two buttons. And I thought, well, I don't want to have to hem that because you know how I am about hemming. So let's just take the bottom off the original sweatshirt and put it back on here. Voila! Okay, first I cut the green one, and then I cut down the bottom of the sweatshirt, and I just kind of eyeballed it, left about a ½ inch above that. Okay, I got it all trimmed out, the bottom. Now I'm going to fold it in half like this, touching the two seams on the side of the band. And I'm going to mark the centers just a little bit. That way I'll have again, 4 points that I can use to reference in case I need to do any type of gathering or pleating or whatever to make this fit inside, because it's not going to be perfect. So we're going to use our side seams with our side seams and our center point with our placket, and let's find the center point of our back. So I'm going to put my side seams together here like this. And of course, if we get to the point where we figure out that, you know, the front and the back obviously are different width and I need to make accommodations, we can do that. It's not a problem. There's nothing set in stone with this process. So I'm just marking the center of the back. Now we've got our 4 points. So this is still turned right side out. I'm going to turn it upside down. And I'm going to, I don't think there's really a right side or a wrong side to this. But I'm going to, I've turned it inside out as well. So you can see that's the serge line. And we're going to slip it up onto the bottom. So we're just kind of pulling the bottom of the shirt through like that. And then we can start pinning our center points, our 4 points, and gauging how much gathering we're going to have to do. Now I'm just pinning around. I really didn't have that much to gather, actually. It fit rather nicely, which was another pleasant surprise. Okay, I've got it completely pinned around, and for the most part, it fit really well. There was a little teeny tiny bulk in the sweatshirt piece, so I did a little teeny tiny pleat on the side seam where it really wouldn't be noticeable. Now, the best way to handle this is either a zigzag or a serge. So I'm going to take it to the serger, serge around the edge, and see where we're at. Once I got it started, it was a pretty simple serge all the way around. But when you're in the round, you got to serge off. Okay, everybody. I am actually really happy with this. It turned out better than I was thinking. It gave me the room I needed in the sleeves. And I was surprised that I put the band back on. I'm kind of digging it. This would be a great project for one of those sweatshirts that, if you're like me, you've ruined the front somehow. So cut it out and replace it with something else. Or like I said, if your sleeves just aren't working, they're too tight, expand them, There's a lot of things you could do with this. And afterthought, when you're putting the seam in, put a little piece of lace in it or ruffle or something, There's all kinds of options you can do. So if you enjoyed this, by all means, like, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to hype. And I will catch y'all on the flip side of our next project.